Um, Greet you all to this meeting. I want to take a moment real quick to recognize the importance of this meeting. The work we're going to be discussing today, it isn't new. It's a result of years of dedication from our community, our partners, and our service providers. And as we have talked to the members here, it's also the jurisdictions that are representing your communities today as well, and everyone else in this virtual meeting. So I just really wanted to underline that the years of listening, planning, and collaborating, along with problem solving, have built the foundation that allows the Coordinated Homeless Response Office to bring forward the system updates you'll hear today. It also underlines our community's commitment to finding real implementation solutions to homelessness. And it is the reason why we are able to take these next steps with clarity, shared purpose, and momentum. So just really wanted to underline that as we open up this meeting today, to show that what we're really excited to present today is evidence that the work that our community has been doing for years is paying off. And we are really looking forward to hearing the guidance that we received from board members so that we can continue to move forward with these. So I'll hand it back to Julie to move forward.
Thank you. We've got some business and housekeeping items to start, so I will go ahead and share my screen. Thank you and welcome to your spring quarterly meeting. Virtual housekeeping, this meeting is being recorded. It gets posted on the website within a week after this meeting happens. If you can mute yourself, unless you are sharing or doing a public comment, that would be very helpful. For folks who would like to make a public comment, please type your name into the chat area. For example, Julie, public comment on this topic, and I'll pause to see if there's anybody on the phone. I don't see any folks on the phone right now, but we will get to public comment in just a minute. Just a reminder of the agreements for the culture and the conduct of the Hope Board that were set over 6 years ago now to be inclusive and respectful and curious and open-minded. So please just be mindful of the culture that the Hope Board likes to maintain and its dialogue. So the meeting agenda, we'll have an opportunity for public comment. The prior meeting minutes need approval. We have, I forgot to change that, I'm sorry. We have a chair election, chair and vice chair, not co-chairs, chair and vice chair election. And then you will hear a progress update from the Coordinated Homeless Response Office. That's the CHRO. CHRO stands for Coordinated Homeless Response Office. And then we have some discussion and feedback from our Hope Board members. And if there is time, if there's any other roundtable updates from the Hope Board, we will do that as we close. I will stop sharing and see if we have anybody who is here for public comment. I am seeing none in the chat, and I am also seeing no folks who have called in on the phone. Okay, no public comment today. Thanks for your patience, folks. Heading back over to the PowerPoint. For the meeting minutes approval from January, we will need a motion to approve them and a second, and then I will go through each of you. And the only Hope Board member who needs to abstain from voting is Mark. He had a proxy attending in January. So can I please ask if there are any changes or edits to the meeting minutes from January? I received none via email. Hearing no changes or edits, is there a motion to approve them?
I'll move to approve the minutes. Wise.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there a second?
Second, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Andrade.
Sorry, my certain programs got like stuck on my yeah, it was frozen anyway. What was your question?
That is okay. You are voting to approve the January meeting
minutes. This is my vote. Yes, sorry.
Thank you so much. Bruce. I did not see Bruce here yet.
I'm here and I approve.
There you are. I'm sorry, Bruce. I have my screen share right here, so I can't see you.
No problem.
Do you vote to approve the meeting minutes, Bruce, from January?
I do.
Thank you. And is Rick here? I can't see the attendees right now.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Rick. And you know what? You would need to abstain from voting on these as it was Rachel who was on the HOPE board in January. But thank you for being here today. Jim, Councillor Moorfield.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Yes, approve.
Mark, I know that you're here and you're abstaining from this vote. Can you confirm?
Yeah, I'll confirm that I'm abstaining from the vote due to lack of attendance at that meeting.
Thank you for sending Paul as your proxy, though. It helped us move everything forward. Ryan.
I'm here and yes.
Thank you. Is Chris Workman in attendance? I can't see the full attendee list. Okay, not seeing him. We will move on. Commissioner Wise.
Yes.
Thank you. Your meeting minutes are passed and we can move on to your next business. For the chair and the vice chair, just a reminder that the chair will conduct the meetings and may not initiate a motion, but can second and can vote on things. And then we'll consult with the CHRO staff to set the agenda, and the vice chair shall be responsible for all of that if the chair cannot be in attendance. And thank you, HOPE board members who have stepped forward to offer yourselves as candidates to serve in these roles. If you can each say your name, your organization, why you're interested in serving as chair or vice chair, and then we'll have a motion to approve you and vote on it. Jessica, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you, and I will stop screen sharing.
I already forgot the bullets, but I am Jessica Andrade, Philomath City Councilor. And why I am interested in leadership? Because, well, I suppose the main thing is that I do want to learn more about, how to help our unhoused population and housing insecure. And it would be great to have those deeper conversations with staff when preparing for meetings. So I guess that's why.
Thank you, Jessica. And then Jim, if I can pass it to you for vice chair.
Jim Moorfield, Corvallis City Council. I'm in the second year of my first term on the council. I retired in 2018 as executive director of Willamette Neighborhood Housing Services. Was there for 20 years. And prior to that, I worked at CSC and managed contracts for state money to serve homeless folks. And before that, I was in the 1980s, I was at community outreach and serving, providing direct services to homeless folks, among other things, during that tenure. I want to be vice chair because I learned a long time ago that when you step up for leadership positions, you're a step closer to a lot of the conversations that move things forward.
Thank you so much, Jim and Jessica. We will need a motion from one of the other HOPE board members to be able to vote to ratify them as chair and vice chair.
Are there time for questions?
Of course. Apologies. Nancy, please go for it.
Thank you, Jessica and Jim, for offering, stepping up to do this. So I did note that the chair does not have a vote. Is that correct, Julie?
Let me double check my work on this, Nancy. The chair cannot.
Or they just don't make a motion.
Yeah, the chair cannot initiate a motion, but they may second and they shall vote on each issue after the question is called. Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to clarify that because I would hate for, it sounds like, Jessica, you're very passionate. I just want to make sure that you still get your vote in. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy, for clarifying that. Ryan.
Yeah, I just wanted to pause for a second and see if there was anybody else who wanted to make a nomination of someone else or themselves. Otherwise, if there's no other nominations, I will move to support Jessica and Jim.
I received no other interest from other Hope Board members, so I can confirm it from the staff side. Thank you for the motion, Ryan. Is there a second?
Mark Shepard, second.
Thank you, Mark. We will go ahead and vote. And you know what? Let me go ahead and just go through you in alphabetical order because that will help me keep track. Okay. You know, I don't know if you can vote for yourself, but I think you can. So I'm going to say, Jessica, go ahead and vote.
Sure. Sure.
Bruce.
Why not?
Bruce.
It's a vote of yes or no, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying. Rick.
Yes.
Thank you. Jim.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
I don't see Chris here. Nancy.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, Chair Jessica Andrade and Vice Chair Jim Moorfield, to your roles. There are 2 more meetings in 2026, and we will connect with Jessica ahead of time to make sure she is able to attend both of those meetings so that we can prepare. And if there is, if she's unable to attend them, Jim, we will reach out to you as soon as possible to prepare as well. Thanks, team. That's exciting. Okay, moving on to your next items. Let's see here. Rebecca, I think I'm handing it off to you on this slide. Is this slide number 9? Well, no, I'm doing the refresher. Sorry, folks, I had a rough morning. Refresher, what does our coordinated system need from HOPE in 2026? Coordination between you all as operational decision makers who have authority to include other departments to collaborate with our Coordinated Homeless Response Office, the CHRO, in work groups for system improvements. We also need all of you as HOPE Board members to liaise back to your member governments or your organizations for awareness of all of this work. It's complicated. It crosses lots of agencies. For your buy-in and for policy change when it's relevant, which is why we have representation from policymakers here. And then really wanting to focus on where we have local and regional control to make change and improvements, because we can't change everything at the state or the federal level, but we do want to change what we can here at the local level for improvements. So that's what we are working on in 2026. Okay, Rebecca, I will pass it to you.
Thank you. And so with that in mind, the refresher of what the purpose of the HOPE is the HOPE Advisory Board for informing the work of the Coordinated Homeless Response Office. We really are seeking your recommendations on how we will continue to approach the topics that we will be talking to you about today, and also getting feedback and guidance on specific elements of the work that we're going to present to you today as well. So if you could move on to the next slide. Thanks, Julie. So we look forward to talking specifically about just an update of the work we've been working on. And then also at the previous meeting that we met with you last quarter, we talked about 2 areas of focus that the Coordinated Homeless Response Office will be looking at over the course of 2026 and 2027 as part of our overarching implementation of a homelessness response in Benton County. And then we will also move on to organization, specific updates from you all, and then also ways in which those updates and our updates might align in achieving the goals that we have that we share. So first of all, we're going to go over the regional coordinator role. Many of you have heard about this in the context of the statewide sheltering program. So that's House Bill 3644, which was a state initiative to coordinate sheltering services across the state. So we'll be talking about those 2, and they're kind of integrated into each other. Also, a shelter bed survey that we conducted last year that it will also help inform our statewide sheltering program implementation. We'll also go over the PIT count out that Julie led in our community. And we will also talk about city and county, specifically the city of Corvallis and Benton County coordination on 2 properties for transitional housing. And then we'll touch on property manager outreach to support our access to available units in Benton County. So specifically, the House Bill 3644 statewide shelter program initiative was a competitive process that regional coordinators would be identified, and they would, for areas of the state that would be no smaller than a county. And so through collaboration and coordination among our regional partners in Lynn and Lincoln County, along with discussions locally with our providers, the Coordinating Homeless Response Office on behalf of Benton County sought out competing for the regional coordinator role, and we have been selected for that. What this entails, though, over the course of the next several months is that we will be using the local planning group structure that we utilized for previous House bill initiatives from the state to help inform the regional plan that is required as part of serving as that regional coordinator. And that specifically identifies gaps and needs in our community, which we understand there's been a lot of those initiatives in our community. So we are trying to lean on previous analysis that we have conducted, but make sure that it's up to date because things are always evolving in this space. So considering things that we will be utilizing to help inform our regional plan is the local plans around the executive orders. So the emergency declarations that the governor declared upon coming into office around homelessness, along with the strategic plan that the HOPE Advisory Board specifically informed, along with the HOPE recommendations as well. So making sure that we continue to keep our North Star in front of us, but also make sure that we're flexible where needed to address specific local needs. So we've been engaging. For now, we are basically, I'll speak to the homeless service provider update meeting. We utilize that meeting to provide an update to the community at large about this regional coordination process and the plan itself. And then we will be focusing in on specific providers who will shape exactly how both the funding resources and the system development will be engaged on that planning process. So speaking of this, along with the other roles of the Coordinating Homeless Response Office, we were looking at a fairly heavy lift through the spring to meet the state requirements around this. We've got some templates that require some significant data analysis around shelter access, various funding sources in our community. And so we're hopeful that we are getting a head start with more of the local engagement process right now by engaging partners around a general overview of this topic. So what have we been doing in the meantime, knowing that, there are so many different initiatives that are coming down from the state, and how does the Coordinating Homeless Response Office play a role in this? We have been engaging the state on multiple different topics and different forums as it relates to both sheltering, rapid rehousing, long-term rental assistance, and shaping some of the rulemaking processes around each of those initiatives. As well as guiding actual program guidance and eligible activities for funding, so that is directly informed by the implementation of our previous rapid rehousing programs and sheltering programs over the last several years. So we are committing a lot of staff time to making sure that our local community feedback is getting to the state and that feedback is directly related to the experience of people who are being served by these programs. We also take time to elevate issues as it relates to the way that these programs from the state are deployed into our community. We elevate how that is impacting our ability or even our successes locally. We elevate that to the Board of Commissioners, who have provided critical leadership and advocacy at a state level. So speaking of various data sets and assessments that we've done over this last several years that we are utilizing to help inform how we move forward with the regional coordinator role, and then also the flexible housing subsidy pool, which we have mentioned in previous updates to you. is that we conducted a pretty extensive and thorough shelter bed survey of our shelter providers, so our emergency shelter providers in Benton County, which include Unity, COI, Jackson Street Youth Services, and Faith, Hope, and Charity, to understand where the funding sources are coming to our community. This is beyond the scope of just what we are helping facilitate through the role at the Coordinated Homeless Response Office, but understanding where those different funding sources are coming from, whether it's private, federal, or state, and then understanding how that directly translate into shelter bed capacity. The state requested this to help inform how they would move forward with understanding what is a statewide standard as far as shelter bed costs per year. That is another element that we've given significant feedback to the state regarding, the difference between the shelter bed itself operationally versus the supportive services around that, to make sure that we're not losing critical resources that are necessary for shelter beds to be successfully navigating people out of homelessness. So I think, do I hand this to you, Julie, or no? We're gonna go over a few of these things. Sorry, I don't know which slide are we
No,
on?
you're good.
Okay,
You're good. I'm
okay.
sorry I couldn't unmute myself while I was screen
Okay.
sharing. I will take over on this one. And then we'll have about 4 more slides of our update, and we will pause to take questions. We promise. Thank you for your patience as we get through this. So what else has the CHRO been doing this past quarter? The point in time count for unsheltered and sheltered homelessness happened the last week of January, first week of February. It's a 10-day window for folks who are unsheltered. It's 1 night for folks who are in shelter. So during December and January, CHRO staff, myself, I provided leadership, coordination, outreach and training for volunteers, communication with all the different PIT sites all over Benton County. Many were in Corvallis. We also had some in 4 different rural areas. And then I assigned over 40 different volunteers to those sites throughout Benton County. And thanks to Rebecca and April for supporting my staff capacity to be able to dedicate to the point in time count, because it directly impacts all of the funding that we are talking about for rapid rehousing and for sheltering. And so also thanks to our leadership for making the decision to have the CHRO provide funding for incentives to engage over 300 unsheltered folks. So those incentives are gift cards, so that we can thank people for their time, give them an incentive to engage and answer some pretty invasive questions that are asked with the PIT survey. And I just got the update today. CHRO staff will be giving an update to the Benton County Board of Commissioners in May, on May 12th, and I've included that date at the end of these slides. And we will share more accurate data counts from the point in time count at that Board of Commissioner meeting. We should be receiving it from our continuum of care data analysts pretty soon. Okay, passing it back to you, Rebecca. Oh, no, I'm not.
You got the
You're
2
right.
first ones
No,
here.
you're right.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm slow this afternoon. I'm going to take the first 2. This slide has to do with our coordination and collaboration with our partners at the City of Corvallis when it comes to accessing housing. So it's not just enough to have shelter beds open and to have the rent assistance to help people and have the supportive services to help them as well. But if we don't have access to units, we can't get folks into housing. And so the Coordinated Homeless Response Office, myself and my 3 colleagues, we have continued to engage property managers. And we've done this in coordination with our partners at the City of Corvallis, who have contracted with someone to help bridge the relationship gap and tap into some of those existing relationships. We hosted a luncheon with property managers just last month as part of our funding from IHN for our DST grant to do property manager outreach and engagement. It's working. Folks, it's working. We have lease ups with for 58 different households with 16 different property managers, and they continue to tell us that having a point of contact at the Coordinated Homeless Response Office to diffuse issues, to build trust, to communicate with, to prevent evictions before they happen has been the game changer with getting folks into private market housing. Quite a bit more than just that bullet I put. And then we've also been coordinating with the City of Corvallis, thanks to Paul and Brigida, around ongoing key properties, 2 properties, Van Buren and Harrison, to ensure that we have coordination across this planning, and that we can complement each other. And in particular, the Coordinated Homeless Response Office will be putting out an RFI or RFQ, a request for information, a request for qualifications, hopefully soon, within the next month. And we have been vetting that language with our city partners so that we align language with what they're doing as well. Rebecca, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. Yes, and another item that we've been closely engaging and partnering with the City of Corvallis is looking at ways and we can prepare for our statewide shelter program implementation by understanding where there might be other local and regional and maybe even state resources that we can implement within the context of our regional plan. And so we've been looking at ways in which we can look at other funding resources that come with a scope of services and make sure that they are filling the gaps between other resources that we already have for shelter services and shelter funding so that we can continue to be that overarching coordinator and leadership for our community around making sure that the scarce resources we do have are strategically focused on specific items, such as making sure that we have integrated service standards and also making sure that our services are directly impacting households towards success out of homelessness. Did you want to stop for questions here, Julie, or are we going to move forward with this next item?
We are going to go through these next
Okay.
3 slides and then I'm going to pause.
Okay, perfect.
Although if you'd like to stop here for questions about the work that we just shared, we absolutely can.
Yeah, that was a lot. If there was any clarification, otherwise we can certainly move forward. All right. So when we approached the H.O.P.E Advisory Board last quarter, we were specifically, we were developing the H.O.P.E Advisory Board with a structure of providing guidance and leadership around the formation of work groups that can directly inform the work that we are focusing on for the implementation of very specific programs within the Coordinated Homeless Response Office. And so 2 topics that have elevated to a critical importance to have coordination across agencies, both on a local and regional level, is first improving referral pathways and also achieving accurate data collection that is directly supporting household outcomes. In addition to that is looking at ways to increase street outreach and the coordination of street outreach with encampment response. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about those specific things and what we have done since the last time we met with you about this, and then be seeking your feedback and guidance on how we might move forward in these topics. So the first one is improved referral pathways and accurate data collection. Many people around the table might question, how does this relate to the work of your agency? Specifically, here is the goal that housing services are centralized in a way that a variety of providers and agencies know that they have a single point of contact that they can refer households to and possibly even staff to seek out housing supports for their programs versus, say, having specialized housing programs across various agencies that maybe their primary focus isn't housing. So ultimately a goal of making sure that we can come in and fill a puzzle piece for that. What that will take, though, is working with agencies to understand their documentation requirements, also their assessment tools that go along with intake and referral processes. In addition to that, it is being able to adopt a method of prioritization, which comes in the form of the phrase coordinated entry, which is a phrase that is mostly understood in our community, but is certainly an opportunity that we can come back and provide more information about that. But essentially making sure that we're integrating a prioritization tool and a referral system in place that we can move people quickly, and that a household that is experiencing homelessness does not have to knock on so many different doors, nor do the individual staff and programs that don't focus on housing have to navigate the complexity of housing support services, so that we can try to manage the complexity of that and buffer our partners' experience and the household's experience from that complexity. So what have we done so far? We have been engaging, actually, I will have a shout out to Corvallis Housing First, who has been supporting, kind of co-leading this conversation with our partners right now to understand how we can improve data collection along with referral pathways to make sure we understand what resources are available quickly and how we can match a actual household to those resources. And so we have been making quite a bit of success, and we've now have a lot of buy-in. And now the next step is coming back to that group with an actual draft form, and then scheduling out training for the summer to hopefully be ready for when we start enrolling households into the flexible housing subsidy pool come late summer. And then in addition to that is, which is all connected, I know we kind of itemize these things out, these topics, and it might seem like these are not related, but this is all for the purposes of navigating folks out of homelessness and into housing. And so when we talk about improved referral pathways, that actually plays a huge role in what we want to embark on, improving the experience for folks that are currently unsheltered. So what we have done so far is, one, we pursued a funding resource through the state that's under Housing 360 grant. We gave a pretty thorough presentation to the city council several months ago about this. And the focus of that grant funding will be around developing coordination, formal coordination between the street outreach component of addressing homelessness along with the encampment response in the form of enforcement. So in addition to that is, we talk about the statewide shelter program. We talk about the connection the CHRO has to shelter. A key item in getting to a place where we have effective street outreach is that we have downstream solutions for street outreach to connect folks to that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. So in addition to increasing capacity for street outreach, along with connections to partners who work with the unhoused, which includes our Parks and Recreation Department, our Corvallis Police Department, and the Corvallis Daytime Drop-In Center, along with behavioral health, is making sure that we sustain the shelter capacity and our rapid rehousing and transitional housing capacity at the same time. And so that's where the city working on rehabilitation of the two properties we mentioned earlier at Harrison and Van Buren. These are all part of this comprehensive focus, is that we don't want to deploy resources into one aspect of this, like street outreach, and be attempting to connect folks to resources that aren't out there. So we're simultaneously making sure that we have the necessary infrastructure downstream to connect folks who are currently unsheltered to those next steps in their journey to housing. Specifically, we are hoping that this initiative and the guidance we get from you will determine what types of shared agreements between agencies and partners might help facilitate ongoing progress in this topic. So what's the ask, right? We gave you quite a bit of an update, but essentially, as mentioned before, we acknowledge the complexity of these topics and ultimately how much detail needs to go into preparing each of these component parts of a coordinated homeless response office or system itself to be able to navigate a single household successfully all the way through that system. And so having you here and learning from this with us is one critical component that we appreciate that you're bringing here. The other item is the guidance and the buy-in to what possibly your agency can bring to the table as far as where do those formal agreements or relationships help sustain the work, because a lot of this work historically in our community has, it's champions in our community that come and go, and we lose a lot of that historic knowledge. And so being able to standardize and be able to replicate these things quickly for staff to come in and deploy is what we're seeking. And then also leadership beyond what we at the staff level are able to accomplish. We've had a lot of experience that with leadership and the county as far as advocating at the state level for the necessary resources we need. And so we just look forward to talking to you more tonight about where there might be an opportunity to share the load.
Okay, I think I'm going to take over to facilitate your feedback on this discussion. And then we will get into the agency-specific sort of overlap alignment with each of your agencies, HOPE board members who are here this evening. So some prompts. Do you have recommendations to assist us in approaching these topics? Do you have feedback or guidance for the CHRO as we continue in this work? And of course, do you have any questions about what we just shared? Jim.
I think to help me better understand what role we might play in regards to those two topic areas, I need to back up and understand where money is flowing. Or what is the pathway for state funding for shelter and related services? And how does it get to the organizations providing those services? What's the relationship with and what is the relationship with regional coordinator?
Thank you. So the two topics, if we answer that question in the context of those two topics, so the referral pathways right now, the funding that the coordinating homeless response has for the overarching coordination and leadership that we're providing on a staff level, that was from an original grant that was House Bill 4123. That feels like years ago, Julie, but it's not even that long ago. But so that's really just the foundational funding that helps support my position along with a grant writer and researcher to be able to pursue other funding resources. Then we have the Oregon Rehousing Initiative funding that came from the state, and that is around with the very specific goals of rehousing a certain number of households by a date defined by the state. So we had an allocation that we met our objective of rehousing. We exceeded it. It was 51 households was our goal. We were able to rehouse 58 households. Which includes a lot more. I think we're over 120 people who we've been able to rehouse within the 58 households. With those grants comes administrative funding. It also comes with street outreach funding. It comes with unit access, various different eligible activities within those grants that are directly related to our ability to take on projects like creating a universal referral, providing trainings for that, how to use that referral in a one-on-one with households, but also the data collection and data quality and the technical assistance that our providers need. So some of that isn't necessarily direct funding that goes to these agencies. It's the fact that we're able to host trainings to help build capacity in those providers' agencies. Then with the Oregon Rehousing Initiative, there's actually direct funding that goes to providers who provide the supportive services for the households that we've rehoused through the rental assistance available through Oregon Rehousing Initiative. So that is, we're asking them to provide case management services, wraparound support services, and in there they have obligations of documentation and data collection and reporting that is built in that we are also simultaneously improving. So as part of a contracted provider with the county, universal referral pathways and documentation and data collection would be built into those contracts with the available funding to support that agency and pursuing that. I think that addresses the referral pathway, but as far as the regional coordinator role, not every community, the regional coordinator is also the one administering the Oregon Rehousing Initiative. So that is the case here in Benton County. So both they have the shelter funding and then you have a rapid rehousing funding. By us having those two together, it allows us to provide connectivity between our shelter and our housing. And then we also pursued the Housing 360 because that was a very specific grant that was focused on people with high complex needs that have unaddressed behavioral health services needs as well. And we were wanting to make sure that we didn't lose sight of people who were experiencing chronic unsheltered homelessness. And so that's why we pursued that funding resource so that we then could take a primary focus with a like dedicated funding source towards unsheltered homelessness. And that's where the street outreach encampment response topic focus comes from. And so that's where both being able to look at our shelter capacity that comes through the regional coordinator role is looking at, okay, we have funding for shelter, but where does that shelter funding also help streamline connection to our housing programs and our street outreach, making sure capacity in that shelter is sustained. So as far as feedback we're seeking from you all, we have identified where there are specific agency topics by staff going out and having direct conversations with staff in some of your offices about where we might be able to align initiatives. Specifically, what we are seeing is that many programs, for example, we have forensic diversion, we have deflection program, we have adult treatment court. All those programs provide really critical services for folks. And if those programs also have to become housing experts, it can detract from their ability to serve the people entering their programs. In addition, without the housing puzzle piece, those programs are proven not to be as successful as they could be if that household does not have stable housing. And so what we are seeking is the ability to leverage the fact that within the flexible housing subsidy pool, which is our rapid rehousing program in the coordinating homeless response office, is that we don't have the capacity to bring the specialized support services like adult treatment court or the diversion program or behavioral health or other programs. So what we are seeking is the ability to formalize pathways through referrals and through agreements that allow us to connect housing to people who are engaging other services, that proves that that investment goes a lot further when we have those critical two components together, is those services with the housing. In addition to that is understanding from an encampment response is that there are things that we are embarking on. I would say it's a pilot. So the ability to learn and go out and experiment with processes and have the capacity for providers to sit around the table and understand what our shared objectives are around addressing unsheltered homelessness. And so, as I mentioned before, is having those processes standardized is not necessarily us coming and requesting funding resources from other agencies. What we are seeking is guidance on how do we standardize these processes, so when we have a multi-agency response to unsheltered homelessness, that each player knows their roles and responsibilities, and that improves the outcome for the households that we are trying to navigate out of unsheltered homelessness.
Rebecca, we have about 15 minutes left, and I know we want to get to the agency-specific stuff. Should we go ahead and dive right? Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, just a quick question. As you're working with service providers, I'm just curious what sort of response you're getting from them, on this improved pathways and accurate data, and where you're trying to move street outreach. Are you seeing any resistance? Are you seeing kind of understanding and support in that? Just briefly, I don't need all details, but just curious the lay of the land there.
It has been a great process with starting to just gain a shared language around this. We've made progress, and we have agreed in that folks want to move towards the coordinated entry and utilizing the universal referral form. So our goal is, Julie, I hope we can meet our goal, but is to provide a draft to them by the 10th to get feedback. In addition to the street outreach, I worked very closely with the Corvallis Daytime Drop-In Center to reach an agreement on a contract that would support a very specific approach to street outreach that would it will ultimately hopefully get to a point where it can align with the city's approach as well, so that has just occurred in the last 2 weeks. So one, we've got buy-in from the service providers around the universal referral and data collection, and we have a contract out for signing with street outreach.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, we're going to dive into some specifics, and all of this was in the staff report that we provided you ahead of time as well, if you like seeing it in the narrative form. but I put it on slides here as well for folks who are visual learners like I am. So first we'll start with the city of Corvallis, and already, oh, sorry, Rebecca, you're doing this. I will be quiet. I apologize.
And I think maybe I covered some of this stuff, so I'm sorry that I leak out into other slides often. Okay, so at this point, we've been working really diligently to talk at the staff level with City of Corvallis staff around potential ways in which we can align street outreach and encampment response across a multi-agency approach. What we are seeking now is a formal endorsement in that work and guidance on, is there something more formal that needs to be established as far as moving in alignment together now that we have a contract execute or working towards being executed with our street outreach partner, and that we have that structure in that contract, that then we can come back to the city of Corvallis and say this is what the county through the provision of our partners services can bring, and find where there might be alignment on that level.
And Mark, if you want to chime in here, please feel free. All of the agency leaders, we want you to chime in on your respective slide.
Yeah, so the Parks Department does have a process for kind of geo-referencing camps that they're encountering and tracking, when do they encounter them, when are they posted, when are they cleaned. And I know Parks was very willing to provide that during the pick count. So I'm not aware of any reason why Parks wouldn't want to continue to coordinate through this effort in just helping to provide that data so that the work can be targeted where the unsheltered homeless are in our park system.
May I follow up on that with one more question to that? So one of the structures in the contract that we have is the concept of neighborhood focus areas, where we can provide a scope of work that is focused on an area within Benton County, where we can sit around the table with the multi-agencies that would have a play in responding to that encampment. So that would include our provision of services along with any cleanup or posting. Is there, at this point, we are wanting to make sure that we are providing our contractor provided the resources to be able to staff that type of response, which would include, likely several meetings to, plan out, create a scope, schedule of roles and responsibilities. We would be seeking potentially to kind of formalize a meeting structure that would include parks and police around that structure. So that's what we will likely be seeking once that contract is finalized, is being able to reach back out to the parks and police that we've been speaking to about this now that it's more formalized on our end.
Okay. Yeah, I think that should work. I can't imagine why the Parks Department wouldn't want to kind of engage in that more formal planning process. Certainly, we do have a kind of a matrix of how Parks approaches cleanups, whether it's a safety issue and other things like that. So we'll just want to kind of weave that into those conversations, but I'm sure that I suspect that'll be worked out in those meetings. And we will have a dedicated police staff that is essentially a park ranger. So I think that position would be probably that point person with the police department, at least initially.
Are you ready for me to move on, Rebecca? Okay. Thanks so much, Mark, for the feedback. Moving on to Benton County leadership.
I think that just follows under the structure that we had mentioned before, that we have a lot of critical provision of services that come through the county, and hoping to make it so that the barrier of housing doesn't impact the success of those programs. And so we will be seeking stronger connection and stronger relationships with these other systems to make sure that both the expertise that we don't have within the flexible housing subsidy pool is supported by these other programs, but also that the expertise of housing that we centralize through the Coordinated Homeless Response Office can continue to support these programs' success. And so we've already have communication on a staff level, as we have with the previous slide. And now it's a matter of seeking guidance and if there's any other additional steps we should be taking to formalize this process.
Can I just ask, can you clarify what you're asking?
Yeah, so it may be that, is there a work group that needs to be established? Is that on staff to come back and identify those folks? Is this mainly just, I think at the county level, is continuing to support the lines of communication that are happening here and understanding the connection between these other programs. So I think in some ways that we've discussed sort of on a staff level is there are potential funding resources that may become available that housing is one component of that these other programs could seek, and that while they don't need to get into the business of housing, that the folks that they are referring to the flexible housing subsidy pool may come with a existing subsidy so that we can support the housing connection part, but that we are not getting to a capacity with our state funds that we have right now, that we are running out of the resources to be able to support these other programs. So we've taken the lead on pursuing funding sources to have a primary housing and shelter focus. We would love to be part of a more shared approach for funding resources, and then we can specialize in the housing component of that. In addition to that, it may be memorandum of understanding with some of these other programs, specifically to make sure that referral pathways and releases of information and the ability to have specific staff capacity in these other programs committed to a level of response that is necessary for the housing component to be successful. So this would require CHRO staff being able to access resources that are beyond our scope and our purview.
Thank you.
Rick, wanting to make sure to pause in case you have any questions about this.
I don't have any specific questions at this point, but to Rebecca's, I mean, my interpretation in terms of Rebecca's overview is, how do we create those connections in other county departments so that there is essentially a place at the table so that we have a coordinated discussion when it comes to resources, and where there are connections, may or may not be, or where there are connections to housing, there is more of a, I guess, a coordinated discussion. So basically, Rebecca, you absolutely have my support on that. I think what we have to explore is what's the best avenues to conduct those conversations. Is that at the leadership team table, which was clearly a possibility. My thought is it probably needs to be something a little more targeted as opposed to the broader leadership team, but I think we can explore that together. So this is my long way of saying county is absolutely supportive of that collaboration.
Thank you, Rick. I'll go ahead and move on to the next one.
All right, so in addition to the, I guess this is more in the context of and it's in the context of both topics, both the referral pathways and the street outreach and encampment response, is that, as mentioned before, we are leaning into that universal referral form that will come with an assessment that aligns with a coordinated entry process to be able to make prioritization around housing resources. And so what we will be doing, and I've communicated with Dina Eldridge, with CSC around where the CHRO will be leaning into leading the the case conferencing process for Benton County. We also will need to talk a little bit more with CSC about what that transition looks like and what additional ongoing technical assistance we might need from CSC, having been an expert in HMIS for many years, what that might look like as we transition into taking on the coordinated entry case conferencing for Benton County. In addition to that, I will give the next item to you, Julie, for that one.
Okay, thanks. And just a check-in real quick, folks, on time. We're probably going to go about 5 to 6 minutes over today. I know we try to keep it right at 5 o'clock, but it's going to be a little bit longer today. So the referral pathways, ADRC, what does that stand for? I should have typed it out and I apologize. The Aging and Disability Resource Center with the Cascades West Council of Governments, they do support for folks who are older or disabled. And there are certain timelines for somebody getting assessed in their activities for daily living, their ADLs, and being able to qualify for a personal care attendant, PCA. And as we are transitioning folks out of shelter and into housing, or out of living in tents and cars into housing for the first time, we have seen huge physical needs. In addition to the mental and behavioral health care needs, there's really big physical needs for our aging and disabled folks. And so, Ryan, we'd love to follow up with you and explore any ways where we can improve access to those assessments for ADLs and access to personal care attendants to minimize any delays in care for these extremely vulnerable households who are transitioning out of homelessness, who might not have had an address to be able to even have someone come and do an assessment for them until now, but have really high needs. And I'll just pause for 1 second before I ask you for questions, Ryan. The reason we're having these conversations with all of you in this transparent way, instead of having a one-off conversation with Ryan or a one-off conversation with Mark, is so all of you see the coordination that is happening across all of your different agencies at the staff level. Because if we just went and met with Jennifer at LBHA about how we're going to coordinate vouchers, but she doesn't know how we're working with IHN or how we're working with the COG or how we're working internally at the county, that might hurt our efforts with coordinating on the voucher. And so while it seems like we're just having a 3-minute conversation with Ryan right here, like, why am I hearing this? We want to make sure you hear it, that we aren't having these conversations in silos, and that leadership across all of your agencies sees the coordination that's going on in this way. Okay, I'll stop. Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. On the CSC side, related to HMIS support, yes, keep working with Dina. I would hope that we have a lens for, coordinated entry not being a disconnected coordinated entry based on each county. So the things that we learn that are worthwhile, looking to see how much we can extend that to the other counties, especially since our populations don't pay attention to geography. And so having a coordinated entry that expands across those, but at least our support with HMIS to the extent that we have now, and then Dina can speak more to where we can go in the future. And then on the COG side, I apologize. By the time I was reviewing the material in preparation for today, Randy is at a conference. And so I need to check back in with her. At the very least, I'm committed to us getting together and having a conversation about, can we do something with our timelines? I'm not in a place right now where I can commit to being able to say we can escalate those timelines for being able to do those assessments, but at the very least, getting her to the table to ensure that we take a look at what can we do to try and move those timelines forward.
Thank you, Ryan. And we've met with Randy Moore before, and we have a great relationship with her. So we look forward to following up with you. Okay, moving on to Philomath and your leadership. We hope that you continue to inform how the CHRO can expand this work and address rural needs. We want to make sure we have continued dialogue as the affordable development moves forward. We have an MOU with Commonwealth. We're excited to see that development and Philomath, so keep talking with us. And then, like Rebecca said, we are working to finalize a universal intake and referral pathway. And we are working directly with Harriet's Housing and with Philomath Community Services, and hoping to hear feedback from the more rural perspective about what that looks like for intake and referrals and assessments. And then Crossroads Communities is an organization that has had a lot of success in rural Lynn County, in Lebanon and Sweet Home. And they have gotten funding to add support services in rural Benton County, and they're looking for a site in Philomath. So wanting to make sure you're aware of that, and if you have feedback about that or questions, Jessica, I'll pause and check in with you.
That is awesome to hear. Yeah, thanks for letting us know. I can't think of anything to update or contribute at the moment, but I'll be sure to check in with staff and get back to you if things come
Thank
up.
you.
As
Thank
things
you
come
so
up.
much, Jessica. I think we only have 2 slides left, so I'll pass this over to Rebecca or April.
This is actually very timely of a conversation, because one thing that we have heard from the state is they are encouraging recipients of the Oregon Rehousing Initiative and the statewide shelter program to look in ways of more intentionally leveraging Medicaid supports to sustain the supportive services that are necessary. And so what we want to talk about today is that Benton County, with the structure that we have through the flexible housing subsidy pool, really wanted to pilot a process where we could establish a per member per month for the tenancy supports through HRSN for our flexible housing subsidy pool participants. Obviously, we've had a lot on our plate across agencies, and so in some ways, not having a contract in place yet might be a silver lining, because we've been undertaking a lot of things, but we definitely want to make sure that if HRSN continues to be a resource, that we have the ability to leverage that for our flexible housing subsidy pool participants, and then finding ways in which that can also support the regional coordinator role as far as services in our shelter environment. And so just wanting to highlight the importance of making sure that there's a strong relationship between the Coordinating Homeless Response Office and IHN around that.
Yeah, thank you. So I actually sent out another little radar ping on this during the presentation, and got some new information back, which I'm happy to report. Alicia Bublets on our team is kind of taking this on point, and looks like there's been some very recent forward motion on it. She said that she had some communication back and forth with April just yesterday, and believes that our contracting team is going to have something to put into final review internally as soon as tomorrow. So let's keep our fingers crossed that it all looks okay, and hopefully we'll be moving forward soon.
That is such great news, Bruce. Bruce, thank you so much for following up on that. That's where the leadership support and buy-in and understanding how it affects the whole rest of the system is really helpful. Ryan, we have 1 slide left for LBHA. Is it a question right for this one?
Yeah, it was just kind of a quick question around the HRSN. And given that HRSN currently provides tenancy support for eligible individuals, and IHN CCO does a funding mechanism for that, do we see that going to a per member per month situation that allows for a flexible spending pool will change the delivery of the current system? Obviously, I have interest in that question because CSC is currently administering the HRSN program. So,
yeah, that's one thing we'll have to look at, what the coordination of funding between those 2 streams would be, and how many individuals would be impacted. In other words, what do we really mean by member? in this case. I'm suspecting it's like per resident, not like across all IHN members necessarily. But
And we will
we'll
also be piloting this. So Benton County will be the first one to do per member per month for tenancy supports in the state of Oregon for our 58 households. And so we're not sorry, Rebecca, don't look at me like that. I just mean, but we will be figuring out how this will work and developing a model and sort of a pilot approach because nobody else is doing it in this way yet.
And I will follow up. There's a lot of complexity to this topic that is definitely not at all even closely given justice in the amount of time we would need to in this presentation, that all those considerations about making sure that there aren't dual enrollments across different agencies. That's been a long, why this has taken the length that it has is because we've been very thoughtful about how we can leverage this with our existing supportive service contracts with our community-based organizations. And so it's a way to centralize resources through the Coordinating Homeless Response Office as it relates to folks in our flexible housing subsidy pool.
We'll report back as it moves forward and we learn more. Jessica, is it about this or can I move on to LBHA? Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm not entirely sure I understand what was just said about the HRSN program with this, but I would just saying that I would love to hear more about the update and like ask clarifying questions and to be part of that discussion of what that looks like if possible. Just want to throw that out there. So thank you.
We'd be happy to follow up once we have a contract in place and we know more about it and report back to you. Jennifer, thank you for your patience. Rebecca, I think you're taking this one.
Yeah, they're, even today, some of the staff from the Coordinating Homeless Response Office were able to represent flexible housing subsidy pool as it related to accessing preference referrals for homeless disabled folks. And so we've been able to find ways in which we can leverage the temporary rental assistance from the state with the housing choice voucher through LBHA. And we've actually had a lot of success where our folks who are approaching the 24-month limit of rental assistance have actually, at this point, this cohort that we're seeing, more than 50% have been able to secure a housing choice voucher before their 24 months of rental assistance is up. So that's exciting. That is unique. Each cohort is different as we move through this, but one thing that we want to just continue to work with LBHA on is also the long-term rental assistance program that the state is working on, which is intended to be available for as long as a household needs it, but might come with various limitations or more flexibility as it relates to how that could work within the confines of the existing federal housing choice voucher system. In addition to that, we've gotten updates from the state around limitations on things that they had originally deployed through the Oregon Housing Initiative that have since, due to funding challenges, have cut various different services. And so wanting to make sure that we're talking to the Housing Authority about the impacts of those. And because we've been able to bring a lot of support services to folks through the flexible housing subsidy pool who are a housing choice voucher recipient, and that their housing stability has been not just successful because of the stability of the voucher, but also the supportive services that the flexible housing subsidy pool has brought. So learning on ways that we can continue to learn from that structure of bringing the support services to the folks that are recipients of the programs at LBHA.
So Rebecca, I'm guessing you're wanting me to say something or see if I have any input. And I do, the first thing I just really want to say is that I understand the complexity of real coordination, having been through various efforts in the last 25 years of similar things. I mean, it's obviously a really needed and sometimes feels like a futile effort to have real real coordination. So I understand the complexity of that, and we're totally in support of getting this going. The one thing I wanted to give input on LBHA's role in specifically in the ones that we've had success with recently is that I think it's important that we're coordinating about the reporting on those families, specifically making sure that we're not losing track of them after they fall into the permanent housing world of the voucher. Oftentimes they're just they're just with all of the other thousands of households that we're assisting. So at some point we can connect to make sure that that's happening, some sort of a tracking system, or that we're coordinating that piece. I think that would be fantastic.
Excellent. We've also been able to secure some, I guess I would say, tables at the state to provide feedback around some changes that we are anticipating potentially around how they may fund the supportive services moving forward. And, having LBHA potentially provide some anecdotal content to say how important your programs, how important the supportive services that come from these other agencies are to make sure that your programs are sustained as well, as far as the household outcomes that you're hoping to achieve. So I think, and this just happened in the last week. So since we've even been developing these slides, there might be some opportunity to do some shared advocacy between the county and LBHA on this topic.
Great.
Thanks, Jennifer. For folks, I should have typed out this acronym as well. HCLGP is the Housing Choice Landlord Guarantee Program, and it's a financial safety net for property managers who rent to folks who have a Section 8 voucher. And it did apply to FHSP households that were rehoused by a certain date, but that safety net is now up in the air for our FHSP households that will be enrolled going forward. And so we are learning more about that as we go. So we'll talk further, Jennifer. Okay, our commitment to you all at the HOPE Board. May 12th, you can hear an update from us at the Board of Commissioners Office, the BOC. It will include PIT count data from our continuum of care. And in July, we plan to return with updates about how it's going as the regional coordinator with our statewide shelter plan and our regional assessment of needs. Once we know what our funding allocation is, we have 60 days to submit our regional plan. And so we are still in a bit of a limbo here as far as knowing our allocation and the date of submitting that, but we should know by July. Let's hope. And we also plan to have further progress with both of those work group topic areas. And we may need further guidance from you in leadership about how to move things forward or formalize things. Okay, and there's also lots of ways to stay updated for anybody who is tuning in. You can subscribe to get updates. I'll go ahead and stop sharing. I know we're 15 minutes over, but are there any other questions? This was a lot of information tonight. Thank you. Please feel free to follow up with myself or Rebecca if you have any questions about this or want to discuss things further. Anything else, Rebecca?
Thank you.
Thanks all. We will go ahead and end your HOPE meeting at 5:14. Thank you for letting us go over. Everybody have a wonderful night. We'll see you in 3 months. Take care.
Thank
Great
you.
job, team. Take care.
Paula, do you have everything you need?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.